All our anger, our grief, and sadness got directed at him.
Being the leader of a rock band is a lot of responsibility, and James Hetfield has had to take charge and stand up for his crew on multiple occasions. This has caused me to make a few enemies and lose a couple of friends. You just know that if he hates anybody, he didn't have much of a choice. And at 61 years of age, here are 6 artists James Hetfield hated most. Starting our list at number 8 is Lane Staley. He illustrates that at one point in Hetfield's life, he was a bully and a jerk. Initially, Hetfield admired Alice in Chains as peers and a force. He saw them live. He respected the music. As much as he was not close to Lane as a friend, he really didn't have a reason to be vile towards him. In a Revolver interview, Hetfield said, "I wasn't really close with Lane, but I remember going to see Alice in Chains many times. I remember when we were down in LA in 1991, making the Black Album, I left the studio early to see them play." Tension arrived in 1994 when Alice in Chains pulled out of a big summer run with Metallica because of Lane's health problems stemming from substance abuse, which made touring impossible. Fans who were expecting two giants sharing a bill instead watched fuse after fuse blow. On stage that year, Hetfield made a joke at Lane's expense. The crowd didn't take it well. It was a public snap that people still point to as the clearest fracture between a Metallica frontman and the troubled Seattle hero. That flare-up might have seemed cruel, but the story deepened instead of ending. Lane's addiction became a dark through line that haunted the 90s. And it haunted Hetfield's art too. This was early in Hetfield's career when he felt doing brash things like this was cool and being a straight-up jerk would earn him accolades. Deciding to pick on Lane in his moment of vulnerability was a low blow, but it wasn't as if it was out of pure hatred. But Hetfield learned his lesson from that experience. Hetfield didn't just hate this next person, he was afraid of him. Artist number 5, Jason Newsted. The bass player arrived in Metallica in 1986 as the answer to a nightmare. Cliff Burton had lost his life in a bus crash, and the band needed a young player who could hold the low end and keep the engine running. Newsted accepted the job, and for 15 years, he became the steady hand behind one of metal's most volatile machines. Yet what looked like security slowly hardened into frustration. By the late 1990s, the band was changing again, and Newsted wanted more than the back seat he'd learned to occupy. He formed Echo Brain and poured his identity into something that was not Metallica. That decision would become The Wedge. The fault line was not one event but a stack of small betrayals. Newsted had long complained that his ideas were ignored and that the bass was regularly minimized in mixes, a grievance that dated back to the "And Justice for All" era. He later described leaving as the hardest thing in my life to walk away from Metallica. For Hetfield, on the other hand, Metallica's potency depended on unity and focus. Side projects were a threat, not a hobby. He put that stance succinctly when discussing offshoots. "I wanted to add to me, not subtract from Metallica." Things escalated into a standoff in 2000 and boiled over in January of 2001. Management and others at the band reportedly liked Echo Brain and explored ways to promote it. This was a move Hetfield found threatening. Newsted believed the band's inner circle was complicit and that his creative life was being policed. So on January 17, 2001, he walked away, filing a terse public statement that framed his exit as private and personal, while later interviews fleshed out the mix of physical wear, anger, and artistic suffocation that drove him out. What followed read like theater. During a period of deep introspection, Metallica opened its wounds on camera, and an on-set therapist later suggested Newsted did not truly want to leave, but was pushed into it by simmering group dynamics. Lars and others would later admit Newsted had been overlooked and, at times, treated harshly. Those admissions are payoffs after the long cliffhanger. The band's own accounts confirmed that the split was messy and mutual hurt was real, but at the heart of Newsted's mistreatment was James Hetfield. He hated the idea of their member trying to think outside of the box instead of getting with the program. It may have been selfish, but Hetfield was only doing what he felt was best for the band. But that wouldn't be the last time a bandmate would earn his hate. Because artist number 4 is Dave Mustaine. When most people think about Metallica, the names that instantly come to mind are James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich. The two were the heartbeat of the band from the start, but older fans of Metallica know that there was another critical piece of the puzzle. A fiery, talented guitarist named Dave Mustaine. That's right, Megadeth's founder and lead singer was part of a whole nother band. But here's the thing, he wasn't just a mere member of the group, He was their engine room. When the guitarist first auditioned to join, it looked like Dave would be the perfect fit. His speed, aggression, and raw guitar tone gave Metallica the edge that set them apart from every other young thrash band in Los Angeles. But the problem was that the fire Dave brought to the stage also followed him off it. His drinking, his temper, and his clashes with the others slowly started to make things toxic. The breaking point came in April 1983. Metallica was about to head to New York to record their debut album. Dave woke up one morning to find out his ride with Metallica was over. Without warning, James, Lars, and Cliff Burton told him he was out, then handed him a bus ticket back home. Mustaine recalled later, "The thing that really upset me was that they never gave me a warning, and I never got a second chance. That bus ride became one of the most famous exits in rock history, and it left Mustaine burning with resentment. He would later take that anger and pour it into the creation of Megadeth, a band that quickly became one of Metallica's fiercest rivals. The riffs were sharper, the lyrics darker, and the competition undeniable. In a way, Metallica had created their own enemy. For years, the bitterness between Hetfield and Mustaine played out in public. Interviews, jabs, and constant comparisons kept the feud alive. Mustaine even admitted how hard it was to carry the weight of the split, saying, "There are three sides to every story. There's my side, there would be the other person's side, and then there would be the truth, which is somewhere right in the middle." Hetfield's reflections on Dave have always carried a mix of respect and firmness. In one interview, he said, "It was necessary. It's obvious that he had the same drive as us. He went on to do great things in Megadeth. He's an amazing, talented person." That quote sums up the tension perfectly. Hetfield didn't hate Mustaine for his talent. In fact, he admired it. What he couldn't tolerate was the chaos that came with it. There were moments where it seemed like fences could be mended. In 2011, at Metallica's 30th anniversary shows in San Francisco, Mustaine even joined the band on stage. Fans thought it might be the start of a new chapter. But later, disagreements over songwriting credits and royalties showed that the wounds still ran deep. It was over the split on the 1982 demo No Life Till Leather. Mustaine felt only he and James deserved royalties from it, and Lars Ulrich didn't contribute enough, but James felt all three of them deserved a share. Mustaine has revealed that he's willing to extend an olive branch and leave things in the past, stating, "I have been secretly hoping there'd be a day when James and I can write together again." But as for James Hetfield, he doesn't hate him as much anymore, but there's still bad blood between them. He said this in a fan magazine, "I think, especially with Dave, with all of his struggles, I see him healthier now. I see him as less of a bitter guy. But I do see a lot of stuff in the press with him talking about jamming with us and making an album, all this other crazy stuff. I read it and say to myself, hold on. This is the Dave that we kind of wanted to forget about." So, unless Dave Mustaine fixes that mouth of his, he'll remain on Hetfield's hate list. But at least he won't be alone, because this next person is staying on that list. Artist number 3, Axl Rose. The relationship between Guns N' Roses' Axl Rose and James Hetfield is another example of how things can get sour quickly. The two bands never really had a reason for enmity to exist. At the Olympic Stadium in Montreal on August 8, 1992, Metallica were set to perform. Given how big they were at the time, everybody in Montreal was excited. Metallica's performance was bound to be the highlight of the summer. It was going to be memorable, alright, but not for the reason anyone would believe.
Well, thanks to the lame-ass security, I'm going home.
This was quite possibly the worst thing that could happen. Rock stars are known for continuing their performances even in the worst of circumstances, but this was not one of them. Metallica's performance was cut short, and James Hetfield was rushed to the hospital. There was only one band that could save the show, and it was Guns N' Roses. The accident had delayed the concert for over half an hour, and fans were really agitated. So with Guns N' Roses set to take the stage after this, a stellar performance from them could save the night. But their performance, or more accurately, a lack of one, made things even worse. Axl Rose was singing like he didn't want to be there, and the people of Montreal didn't appreciate this. And one thing about this city is that they don't hide their feelings. When the concert was over, Montreal turned into a war zone, with rock fans taking to the streets to riot over the disappointment of the concert. By the time James recovered, his heart still hadn't recovered from what happened. Being taken out by an accident was bad enough, but having a concert turned into a disaster was a nightmare. And he had Axl Rose and his childishness to blame for it. He threw a fit, and that was that. I was so disappointed in him, because he could have won so many people over by continuing the show. And he went the exact opposite way and made things 10 times worse and jeopardized people's lives. There was a lot of unnecessary violence because of his attitude. These were the words that James Hetfield told Rolling Stone in his account of what happened on that fateful night in Montreal. This incident never allowed the band to be the same ever again. In an interview, he described the band as an assemblage of grown men. Guns N' Roses are a different type of band, and I use the word band loosely. It's a guy and some other guys. What makes it even worse is that Axl, being the type of person he was, added more fuel to this already fiery feud. He's described Metallica as a bunch of cartoon characters and has accused James of being not only a racist, but a homophobic person as well. There are suggestions that Axl Rose behaved the way he did that night out of spite of Metallica being the bigger band. He has complained about concert arrangements and having to perform in front of fans who are looking forward to someone else performing instead of him. Either way, James still hates his guts, and that's a feeling that won't go away anytime soon. At number 2 is someone that Hetfield hated so much he wanted dead, and that's Bon Jovi. James Hetfield's dislike of Bon Jovi did not arrive fully formed. It accumulated like a tension you feel in the room before something breaks. The story tightens around one vivid night at Donington Park on August 22, 1987, when Metallica were still the hungry outsiders and Bon Jovi were already wearing stadium rock armor. During Metallica's set, a helicopter associated with the headliners flew over the crowd, a stunt that cut across the band's momentum and stung like salt in an open wound. That moment lodged in Hetfield's memory and became shorthand for everything he disliked about the slick, mainstream machine Bon Jovi represented. The irritation moved from fleeting annoyance to a badge of defiance. Hetfield scrawled a blunt message on a white Jackson King 5 guitar that came to be known as the Death to Bon Jovi guitar, a visible symbol of the split between underground ferocity and corporate-friendly arena rock. That sticker was more than a prank. It was a signal. This was about identity, credibility, and territory. Fans who knew the subtext read the sticker like a manifesto. Hetfield later boiled the feeling down to contempt for image and pretense. He's just so pretentious. Just looking at his picture, there's something not right, something so fooling about it. He's pulling the wool over a few folks' eyes, it seems to me. His Versace ad, the movie star. God, I can't take it. That quotation lands hard because it is not an offhand barb. It is a moral judgment wrapped in personal disgust. It explains why Hetfield's reaction to Bon Jovi was never merely musical. It was cultural. Still, the narrative offers a payoff that complicates the anger. Metallica's rise forced them to make uncomfortable choices, to work with producers and adopt methods associated with the mainstream they once scorned. The same scene that Hetfield rejected would, paradoxically, help launch Metallica into global superstardom. That irony sharpens the original feud because it shows how lines blur the moment success arrives. Critics call it evolution, purists call it sellout, and Hetfield's old sticker reads like a relic from a war that history would not let stay simple. The number one artist whom James Hetfield hates the most is someone who wanted out of the business and was in bed with his enemies. And that's Fred Durst. When you learn why exactly Fred Durst is number 1 on this list, you might even end up hating Fred Durst yourself. The new millennium was an incredible time for the rock music scene. Bands that were on the come-up in the late 20th century were entering the new era as legends of the genre. But Metallica, on the other hand, were facing legal battles that threatened not only their music, but their craft and their existence at large. The existence of Napster Incorporated and its business operations threatened Metallica from having legal copyrights of their music. Their songs, along with unreleased demos, were being illegally downloaded and distributed on the site without their knowledge. So they filed a lawsuit against the tech company. Metallica were adamant in their pursuit of legal justice, as they knew that if they lost this battle, soon the rock genre and music at large would be at risk. During this period of legal battles, James Hetfield famously said, "There has to be someone who steps up and represents musicians. Metallica has always felt fans are family." To James, this wasn't a matter of pride or money. It was about principles and artists not being done dirty. Our battle with people giving our stuff away was a moral battle, not a technology battle or a convenience battle. We do this because we love it, and it sustains us and our families. Given the nature of things, it was hard to imagine that anybody, let alone fellow artists in their right mind, would have a problem with what Metallica were pursuing. If anything, everybody should have been on Metallica's side. But in the same month that Metallica went to court with Napster, Limp Bizkit signed a sponsorship deal with them. So when it came to Fred Durst to pick a side, he decided not to hurt his pocket. In fact, he came out and said that Metallica were selfish for doing what they did. I would think the only people worried about that are people that are really worried about their bank accounts. He even used the opportunity to promote them, saying Napster was the future with this quote, "An amazing way to market and promote music." This felt like a stab in the back for James Hetfield, and since then, he has wanted nothing to do with the New Age band. In an interview with the Fan Club magazine, Hetfield said this, "All I gotta think of is Fred Durst's red baseball cap, and I get very hostile." He even went on to describe that as fake, stating that they didn't feel like an organic band, and he hated them for it. Although these bands have played at the same festivals, it's clear that if they were ever backstage together, it would cause another legal battle. There you have it, the complete list of the 6 artists Hetfield hated the most. Some made the Metallica frontman look like a saint, while his hate for some artists highlighted his immaturity. Who are you surprised is on this list? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section.